So today, let's cover the best psychological operations. I've only been alive for 30 years, so I've been subject to quite a few of these. And many of these have been ongoing for several decades now that still impact us today. So we're going to be rating these based on their lasting impact, how intricate they are, how many people are still convinced, and just generally how interesting they are. So let's start things off with the food pyramid. This has been great in destroying our population since the 70s, I think. I would argue that only within the last 10 years or so it's become more mainstream to do the complete opposite of what the food pyramid suggests. With the explosion of all these fitness and health influencers, not a single one of them with any level of credibility actually suggests that you follow the food pyramid. And no, I don't count the government or the WHO having any level of credibility. Have you ever seen a fitness influencer say the key to a healthy lifestyle is that the majority of your diet, or at least the largest portion of your diet, is bread? Of course you don't see that. That's what slaves eat. Slaves have their diets consist of grain sludge and vegetables. What did the diets of kings or great warriors consist of? It was meat and dairy, animal products. I still think it's an A-tier psychological operation since I would say 90% of the people over the age of 40 still worship this thing. You know, they still eat seed oils and all that sort of stuff. I'm basing that purely on my own experience. However, I'm pretty sure I am completely correct in my judgment here. Gay Romans, and by extension, gay Greeks, or really any kind of European antiquity civilization. I would refer to Leather Aprons Club video on this, but in short, modern liberal historical approaches, they try to inject let's just be clear, it's a gay agenda. And they do this by arguing that, platonic relationships between men or brotherhoods that were created from being on a grueling campaign together, that these are just proofs that actually all these men were gay, and it's actually totally normal back then for them to be gay. It was accepted and praised as a virtue, they say. But for the sake of the length of this video, let's just say, for my understanding, and again watch Leather Aprons video on this, is that it's the complete opposite. I would say this is a B-tier psyop because every normie that talks to me about history, even when not prompted, they always remind me how gay the Romans were. UFOs, this one took me off guard initially. I mean, for context, I used to watch Tucker Carlson in the morning before I went to work. There was always someone that posted the previous night's show onto YouTube in its entirety. I remember he was one of the first to start talking about UFOs. He was interviewing all these fighter pilots and they're all saying, these things in the sky, they're just so fast. We don't know what they are. We don't know what they could be. They must be aliens, or they're just some sort of ancient technology that we just don't recognize. We don't understand. And right from the very beginning of this, I just didn't care. And as soon as Tucker, my dad, isn't from the CIA, Carlson, as soon as he started talking about UFOs, every second episode, I just didn't care. It's a D-tier psyop. Climate change, I think this is a topic that gets channels flagged for monetization issues. Let's just put a B tier and move on. Sports, well, why was football allowed to resume during the COVID lockdowns before really anything else? Because of the Romans, who were not gay, by the way. They knew that bread and circus was the means to make the population happy, or at the very least, docile. It saddens me when I see huge groups of young men full of energy, spirit, this vitalist energy within them. And all it's channeled into is sports ball. Talking to work colleagues, they always bring up the conversation of sport and I just have to tune out. They're always saying, did you see Nugbu? He sold for $80 million to play for the red team, is owned by the Arab oil barons. It is just so sad when their country is being destroyed in front of them. And all they ever get upset about is when their favourite sports ball team is losing. This is an S-tier psyop. Never underestimate the power of sports on the men of any nation. Chem Trails. Now I'll admit, I really don't know enough about this to seriously comment, but the facts are that the technology exists to manipulate weather. We see it, we understand it, and there's even Geneva Convention rules about not manipulating the weather. And we have seen examples of this going wrong. And the other layer of this operation is that all these heavy metals when put into the sky to poison us, apparently. Again, I just don't know enough about this to really comment. I feel like as soon as, I attempt to go down this rabbit hole, the chemtrail discussions are more of a... It still feels like a schizophrenic containment zone, where as soon as you take a step forward, you're just bombarded with so many theories and information that you can't possibly know where to begin or know what to absorb, or it's just way, way too much. All I can conclude is that I don't like the sky looking like this. It's probably bad what's going on, and I don't want to learn much more out of fear of what I'll find out. So because of that, we're just going to stick it in A tier. Gender ideology, this to me, we're going to stick this in C tier, Psyop. I mean, it had a lot of momentum in 2013 up to now, but this operation isn't even really that convincing to the majority of boomers. They reject it outright. And if the boomers reject it, then it must not be that compelling. However, it does seem to really impact the younger generation. It seems to have quite a devastating impact on, thousands of younger people, as it's managed to warp the children of Hollywood. And a lot of these shootings you see are caused by people who subscribe very strongly to this ideology. And I suppose on that, then, we're going to stick this in the B tier instead, because I still think while a lot of people are rejecting this, there is still an extremist underbelly that is very dangerous and must be examined more seriously. So maybe even A tier, B tier. I just think since so many people don't care for it anymore, and the more kind of, boomers at my work make fun of, the LGBT stuff. So let's just stick it in B tier for now. COVID. Now I think this was at the time an S tier Psyop. But as of today, 2025, I actually think we're going to move this down into maybe C tier, B tier maybe. But let me explain. I think in January 2020, I remember looking at all those videos coming out of China. You saw people dropping face first on the streets. There were people being locked in their homes. And it was all very scary, all very dystopian. I was watching Stefan Molyneux talk about it, talking about all the cases spreading. He had this big world map and all this information. It was very exciting times. It was very interesting to see what was happening at the time. And I remember telling people at work about what was happening. And I was even telling people I think it's Italy went into lockdown. I think that's the first European country to do so. I remember telling people, we're going to follow suit. So you may as well, buy supplies, because, when people do lockdown, what happened, and I was right, people panic buy. Even though there's no supply chain issues, people panic buy, the shops are bare. And I was regarded as crazy. People thought I was just being overreactive and crazy. But then as lockdown happened, people weren't dropping in the street. Nothing happened, nothing ever happens, nothing was happening, which was good, but at the same time I felt like I was able to pivot my orientation of what was going on from we're going to be subjected to, this is the end, to immediately, something's a bit of a miss here. And as I said, nothing really happened. We only just volunteered to destroy our economy even faster. It's like a glitch in a video game where you're trying to speedrun it, where you manage to move from level 3 to level 10 in the destroy your own country simulation. And then it leads into, I guess, we'll compact this all into one operation, is the you-know-what that goes into your arm. Ultimately, it failed. It failed because they could not get the whole population to succumb to the societal and peer pressures. I just guess they'll have to think of something else to get everyone to rally behind. World War II. It's S tier, has to be. The fact that I can't talk about this in much detail on these mainstream platforms about the mythological foundation that World War II created, it can't be questioned. There's no leeway for any sense of revisionism. And I'm not being hyperbolic here. Our entire liberal establishment is built off the foundation, the historical foundation, the mythological foundation, which World War II created, or at least the narrative that was created from it. The fact that questioning certain aspects of it will get you locked up in prison in certain European countries, it goes to show the power of this operation is still extremely strong. And so it must remain as S tier. It can't be anything else. It's probably the highest S tier one we have. Multiculturalism. S tier maybe A tier. I mean, I think because there's such a backlash that, you know, S tier would mean we are essentially, you know, everyone's under its spell. But while it has been very powerful, I think it needs to be knocked back to A tier because we are starting to see cracks. I mean, I'm not under no illusion things are going to change, you know, in the next 5 years, but there are cracks where, you know, what's being discussed in the news would never have happened 10 years ago. So there is a sort of Overton window shift. And so that just shows that the multiculturalism isn't as powerful as an operation to kind of last forever. And just see some of my other channels, we do discuss this in quite a bit of detail of how much of a disaster this is. And I mean, just take a look at your bedroom window to see just how powerful this operation has been on you and your society. I wish to remain optimistic that it's not irreversible, but it's going to be hard. Let's just... No, let's stick this in S tier. I think it's worthy of S tier because of how serious it is and the fact that I make so many videos about this sort of stuff. Yeah, it has to be S tier. 9/11. Now this is impressive. You have to admit, it was a remarkable chain of events to get white men to die in the desert for a country that wasn't even theirs. Brilliant. I mean, that is evil genius levels of Psyop operation. That is, I mean, I was only 6 years old when 9/11 happened. And even back then I thought, wow, I can't believe they did it. They created a sort of, you know, this Rube Goldberg machine of geopolitics that led to Iraq, led to Afghanistan, it led to us being involved where we really shouldn't have been. So I think this should go in S tier, but the lasting effects are beginning to show, aren't they? Especially since October 7th being a turning point. A lot of people now, since October 7th, they're no longer really convinced that we should give unconditional support to our greatest ally for whatever they ask. You know, with what we've seen over the past couple of years, you know, people are less likely as they were maybe 15, 20 years ago to just get involved in the Middle East. It doesn't really... We've seen the effects, we see that it fails, so it's going to take a magic spell of words and situations and maybe further operations to get us involved again. It's going to be hard for them to do so. But while I think the lasting effects should put this from an S tier to an A tier, I just think because of how impressive and remarkable what was done in order to essentially, you know, domino effect us to regime change in the Middle East. It has to be S tier, even if it's, you know, 50 years time, it'll have no real relevance. It is remarkable what was done. Not to say it was good, but from a, you know, a Psyop perspective, you know, bravo, absolutely, you know, couldn't get any more, you know, sophisticated than that. QAnon. Now you're probably expecting me to put this into D tier, but I think it's probably at least C. We can't discredit the impact it had on, you know, the MAGA cult. A certain division of the MAGA cult loved this stuff. It's probably only C tier because it wasn't that sophisticated. It was literally just probably, it was a CIA guy spreading messages on 4chan and then people believing it as, you know, numerology and, you know, proper schizo stuff. You know, every message had secret codes. Two more weeks. You know, the real patriots are in charge. The Q-tards made us laugh, but they did not make the right wing look good. And because of its, I guess, the negative light that QAnon managed to shine on really anything that was, you know, a conspiracy theory or a psyop, the QAnon stuff they were essentially well poisoners. They poisoned the well of every single every single anti-mainstream narrative came. The QAnon was able to poison the well, make it all seem crazy. And I think because of its ability to discredit for right-wing things, then it has to be at least a C tier. Only C because it only didn't go on very long, and I don't have much more to say about that. It was funny in hindsight. That's all I've got to say. So hope you enjoyed the video. This is only kind of a small selection of psyops that I thought would be funny, worth covering. If you have any other ideas, what we can do is, if we have enough suggestions of worthwhile operations that could be worth discussing, we will build upon this tier list for a future video, and maybe over time we will have this huge catalogue of, not all, but the most psyops, and we'll measure them in terms of, well, the made-up grading features that I use today. Do the thing algorithm likes, really helps the small channel out, and again, until next time.